So a food desert is a neighborhood that lacks fresh food, that only has convenience stores, gas stations, and people that don't have access to a car, who aren't mobile. They don't have the same things available to them, say as in an affluent neighborhood that has a Whole Food.
Jill Goubeaud knows that good nutrition is essential for good physical and mental health. She also knows that people who live in food desert communities don't have access to nutritious foods and they can suffer serious health challenges. Goubeaud and her company, NuYou Cooking, focus on building stronger communities by teaching the value of investing in one's health and changing perceptions of what it means to be healthy.
I was born and raised in central Massachusetts in a town that was so small that it had no traffic lights,
That is
no
small.
grocery store, and a center of town so small that if you blink, you would miss it. And this town is right on the New Hampshire border. So all these towns in Massachusetts are, fairly small. So born and raised in Massachusetts, and after I graduated high school, I couldn't wait to get out of that small town.
Now, I have to ask you a question
Yeah.
because I grew up in a big city.
hmm
So the idea of living in a town that you just described is, I could not imagine, right? I grew up in Los Angeles.
Mm.
So what was that like though? I mean, as growing up, is there certain, are there pluses to it, minuses? I mean, what was that like growing up in that environment?
Well, I think as an adult, I see all of the positives for sure. And there were some negatives too. But growing up in this small town, having both of my parents being in education, my mom worked at the local elementary school in the town, and my dad worked a few towns over in high school. In addition to that, my dad was also a police officer in the bordering town, and everyone knew each other. So you couldn't get away with doing anything, especially since my parents were educators. and and it's not like me and my sisters were, problematic, children growing up, but we grew up on a farm, and we had to start working at a really young age. I have some memories of me being probably, 5 years old, um, pulling weeds from the garden, helping in the hayfield, helping split wood and stack wood on the porch. So we have a very strong work ethic now, being adults. But with that being said, it was a positive environment because we had fresh food available to us growing up on this farm. We had a strong work ethic. Um, our parents did the best that they could. Now, some things were embarrassing for sure, because growing up on a farm, we had horses and pigs and cows and all the all the animals. And my dad had some Amish and Mennonite friends out in Pennsylvania. And so we had this wagon, this horse-drawn wagon that my dad loved to take his family out on Sundays. And,
Hmm.
everyone knew who the Goubeaud family was, because both of my parents were teachers, and that. And so driving this horse buggy down
Now, do
the
you have any
main.
photos? I had to, I have to ask that question because I'd
You
love to
know
see some
what? My
photos.
sister has has organized all of our childhood pictures, so I can definitely get you some pictures.
Okay, great. I want to see that.
Yes, I will get those to you for sure. So it was a very, honestly, it was kind of sheltered, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
Um, the school system, I grew up in a very conservative, predominantly white area. And I just felt like there was so much more to see and experience. That's why I couldn't wait to leave.
Okay, now I want to hold that thought for a second because you said a predominantly white place. So when did you see your first person of color or person who was not white? And what
Yeah.
what was your impression?
Well, there was, so in my high school, or no, actually it was in, let's see. I can't remember in elementary school. I don't have any memory um of that. I think in middle school there were, so in this middle school there was three towns that went to this middle school. And I believe, this was grades 7 and 8 were in this school. And there, I remember this memory, as being where I saw my first person of color
Hmm.
um, in school, but of course, I would see other ethnicities, out and about, going to bigger cities and things like that. But in middle school was when I first like went to school with other races.
And so did you
So
have like an impression of I mean, this is a long time ago, right? But I
yeah,
mean, was it like, oh wow, that person's skin is brown, or was there some like initial thought that you had? I'm just wondering if you can remember.
I can't remember
Mm.
exactly, but from knowing like who I am, just like as a person in general, I didn't think anything different.
Mm,
Um,
okay,
yeah.
that's good.
I've always been really open-minded and loving and accepting of people. I grew up uh volunteering with the Special Olympics as a swim instructor. So I've been around a lot of different, people with limitations and just different experiences in life. So
Mhm.
I've always been open-minded and accepting of all people.
Great. Okay. So then when did you get out of this small town?
So at 18 years old, my last year of high school, I transferred to a night school and I was working and doing a dual enrollment program, training to be a flight attendant.
Mm,
And well, not just a flight attendant, but I was studying all of the airline, um, you know, jobs that you could do. And I decided that I wanted to be a flight attendant. So as I was finishing my senior year of high school, I was flying out throughout the United States being interviewed for different airline positions. And I finally ended up getting hired with this airline called Independence Air. They're not in business anymore, but they were in Virginia, Northern Virginia.
mhm.
That was their hub. And so once I graduated high school, I immediately moved to Virginia. So it was like I graduated, and I think like 2 months later, I was moving to a different state. I was really ready, and I was so excited to be spreading my wings and and experiencing life, on my own. And I just knew that there was so much out there to see. So I was like ready to rock and roll.
Hmm. Okay. And so your 20s, 30s, what were you doing then?
Yeah. So, well, just to put things into perspective, I'm 39 now. I'm about to be 40 in February. And so I was in Virginia for, 2 years. And then I ended up moving to Orlando, Florida.
Mhm.
And when I was in Orlando, um, I was figuring out what am I going to do, because I didn't stay working with an airline for a long time. Um, so when I moved to Orlando, I was figuring out what am I doing here, you know? Um, I had a lot of random jobs. My first job when I got to Orlando was working at a upscale salon, and um, I worked the front desk, and I also was a stylist assistant. So I was
Mm.
doing shampoos and washing towels and just being the salon runner, basically.
Runner. Okay.
And that was cool, that gave me a little, flavor of just a different type of pace of what I had been used to.
Hmm.
And then, and I got kind of burnt out on doing that. And then I met this person, and she worked for a weight loss company. And
Uh-huh.
this weight loss company is not around anymore, but it was called LA Weight Loss.
Oh.
And she um she had told me about this position, and because I was into health and wellness, it was really interesting to me. And she said, okay, I think that you should go to the training
Hmm.
and start this as a career. So I ended up doing this training program and being hired on as a weight loss consultant for LA Weight Loss. I did that for several years and grew to be the center manager. And I really loved being a weight loss consultant because I was able to practice my, health and wellness. Well, not practice, but I was able to like educate other people on how to live a healthy lifestyle
Hmm.
using the LA weight loss protocol, but also putting my own flavor into it as well.
Now, what would be your own flavor? Because I hear flavor and I think personality or something, or philosophy, maybe.
Yeah. So more so philosophy. The unfortunate part about working for a corporation like LA Weight Loss or other weight loss companies out there, they have a very strict protocol,
Mm.
and they have a very you have to it's a sales position. At the end of
Hmm.
the day, you're not a consultant for weight loss, you are a sales consultant.
Hmm.
um, I didn't like that
Yeah.
aspect of it. I didn't like to feel like I was selling anything to anybody, or the pressure of
Hmm.
feeling like I had to meet a sales quota.
That's what I've
So,
heard about those
yeah,
places.
yeah. So, what I started doing was putting my own spin on just how to consult people and how
Hmm.
to tie their protocol in with my own personal philosophies. And so it was fine, over a period of time, but there were definitely times when the, area managers would have a conversation, to me about, hey, Jill, like, I know you're doing good, but we have to really stick to this protocol with LA weight loss.
Mm.
And so it was kind of, disappointing. But it was a great opportunity for me to get my foot into the door in the nutrition industry. So I stayed doing that for about 5 years. And after that, I ended up losing my job
Mm.
because the center ended up closing.
Oh.
And so we all ended up, not having a job anymore.
Well, no, I want to ask you a question too, because you mentioned your philosophy and personality and all that. What do you think? Because you're in a job now where there's a certain amount of convincing that I think needs to be done, right? When you're trying to get people to eat right and work out and do these things. So, what do you think are the key um, personality traits or approach that someone like a coach has to have to really be successful and be effective?
That's a great question. I think that meeting people where they're at is super important. I think that as a person, we can have our own values and, ideas about health and wellness, but not everyone is going to think the same way as you.
Mm-hmm.
So being open-minded, having compassion and understanding where other people are at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Knowing that different cultures and ethnicities have, we all have our own traditions and you know, thoughts and ideas about different foods.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, so one, being open-minded, two, being compassionate, and three, having some like different techniques as far as how do you consult with people. So there's a technique called motivational interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
And motivational interviewing basically is you are tapping in to a person's emotion and using their, basically using what they say
Mm-hmm.
and articulating it in a different way to then have them get to the result of them. It's like a client-led interview process. And when I
Mm-hmm.
say interview, that's just meaning like consulting, and just a form of different techniques that different professions can use when you're using client-led techniques.
Okay. Okay. Great. So you found that you had this love for nutrition and so what happened after that? Because I mean that's kind of where you're at now, but take me up to kind of where you are now.
Yeah, so so after that position, I got this job with a sports nutrition company still in Orlando, and that company was starting from the ground up. So I
Mm-hmm.
came in as the director of operations, and we built the company, like I said, from the ground up. And we built it to be a international sports nutrition supplement company
Mm-hmm.
where we were manufacturing all of our own protein powders, mass gainers, different supplements, pre-workouts, post-workouts. So we had the whole line of sports nutrition supplements. So in that industry, I worked with a lot of bodybuilders
Mm-hmm.
and people, just that were really, really focused in on building, building their bodies to incredible, physique.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that was pretty awesome to be in that mix because I came from a weight loss industry to a
Mm-hmm.
sports nutrition industry. So it gave me a whole different perspective on things. And I was with Infinite Labs for about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then so fast forward, I was in Orlando for 10 years total. And then I moved out here to Washington. I moved out
Okay.
here to be closer to my family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've been here for 10 years now. I can't
Mm.
believe it's been 10 years. Um, and, now I have my own brand called NuYou Cooking and Consulting.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had NuYou since 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very proud of this brand and providing a platform to help educate and inspire and empower people to live a life that they love
Mm-hmm.
through nutrition and healthy lifestyle choices.
Now, are you able to talk about any of your medical challenges? Because you had a rather significant challenge that you had to deal with.
Yeah, totally. So this is actually, something that I never ever thought I would have experienced such a um impactful medical thing because I was always so healthy and ate clean and really dedicated my life
Hmm.
since 18 years old to living a healthy lifestyle. So yes, just to give you kind of like a little background information about, all of this to incorporate into the story. So I was vegetarian for 20 years.
Hmm.
And then I was vegan for 7 years.
Wow.
So for a long time, for since I was 10 years old, that's when I decided to become vegetarian.
Mm.
I always felt great. I had a lot of energy. I had, I ate a diverse, diet with all sorts of different, whole plant-based, foods. I didn't really eat a whole bunch of the processed, vegan stuff. And exercise and really like took care of myself. So then back in 2021 in August, um, I had got COVID and I got it pretty significantly. I was out for, like a month of work
Mm.
and just trying to heal and get my energy back. I had chronic fatigue and being a person that was able to work for like 12 hours a day,
Hmm.
having chronic fatigue was detrimental. And I just was so mad at myself for being tired all the time. So, like I got that COVID situation and then I was finally on the mend. And then in November of 2021, at the beginning of like November, end of October, beginning of November, I started noticing that my hair was falling out,
Mm.
like tons of it at a
Wow.
time. Yeah, it was crazy. And at the time, I knew when that started happening and when I started noticing that like all in the front, it was just like gone. And my eyelashes fell out, like it was crazy.
Wow.
And at that time, I knew something was seriously wrong
Hmm.
and I couldn't do it alone. Because I try to do everything as natural as I possibly can. But I knew I needed help. So I went to a kinesiologist chiropractor. And him and I worked together for a couple of weeks doing some muscle testing and doing different things nutritionally. And we ended up doing some blood work. And it was at the end of November, it was the week of Thanksgiving. I had an appointment with him. And in that appointment, um, I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition when your thyroid is being attacked by your immune system.
Mm.
And basically, I was malnourished. I was not absorbing any nutrients because my body stopped producing stomach acid.
Mm.
One of the things that I learned is when a person doesn't eat meat for an extended period of time,
Hmm.
your body can stop producing stomach acid.
Mm.
And you need stomach acid in order to properly break down and digest and absorb the nutrients of food
Hmm.
that you're eating.
Hmm.
So even though I was eating really clean and healthy food, my body stopped absorbing the nutrients.
Now, let me ask you a question. Is it possible to be a vegetarian with or vegan even without that happening? Because some people they really want to stay with that particular approach to eating.
Totally. And I think that that question, I think that people have to be their own judge of that. And I think that some people do great eating that way, and some people don't. And clearly, I was doing I was doing well for a long time
Mm.
until I wasn't,
Okay.
you
Okay.
know? And so one of the things that kind of brought me to this place of where I'm about to say is going through that experience. I was the type of vegan person that you couldn't tell me anything. You couldn't tell me that eating meat was good for us. You
Mm.
couldn't tell me that our bodies were designed, this way. I did a lot of research of, why you shouldn't eat meat.
Mm.
And now I'm at a place of understanding that, you know what? We can't be so committed to these labels.
Mm.
All right. It's more about listening to your body and what is your body telling you?
Mm.
And we can't ignore these signs because our body will revolt against your mind. And when I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, this was not an easy decision for me to start eating meat. Granted, I hadn't eaten meat. I never liked the taste or the texture or anything about it.
Mm.
So not eating it was easy for me. So when the doctor gave me this diagnosis, he said, listen, I know that your whole entire business is built around the vegan concept.
Mhm.
And I I was not looking forward to this appointment with you because I know how hard this is for you. He said, but you have to understand that you, as a human being, you have to decide how important is your life and
Mm.
your health. He said, Jill, you are a health professional
Mhm.
and you're in this predicament and you have to decide, what are you going to do? How
Mhm.
important is your life in this situation? He said, I can sit here and I can write you a prescription, and you will take this prescription for the rest of your life, and you're still going to have the symptoms of the symptoms of having thyroidism, right?
Mm.
Or we can do this the hard way,
Mhm.
but the hard way is going to get you the results to live the life that you want
Mhm.
without a prescription. He said, we can reverse this, but it's going to take a lot of dedication and consistency and commitment that you are going to do this.
Mhm.
And so, I had an emotional breakdown. I told him, I can't do this. This is not, how can this be happening to me? Like, this is not okay. And after I, was stomping my feet and crying and just felt like my world was coming crashing down in front of me, I said, okay, I'm committed to my health. And let me just start by doing bone broth. I can't physically wrap my head around
Mm.
like eating meat at this particular time,
Mm.
but let me start by introducing bone broth. So I did that. I also started doing a lot of research of what are autoimmune conditions and how do they start?
Mm.
Because autoimmune conditions are running rampant. MS is an autoimmune condition, and Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition, Crohn's disease. All these diseases are
Mm.
stemming from our gut microbiome being out of whack.
Mhm.
And there's certain things that we can do in our everyday to help dissipate these conditions from happening. But we have to have a starting point. And I think that, you know, there's so much information out there that it can be hard to navigate through these type of processes. And that's why NuYou Cooking and Consulting is, doing what we're doing, because we want to be a one-stop shop for people to come and have a platform where we have the education, we have the knowledge, and we have the tools and resources in one spot to help people navigate how to live a healthier lifestyle.
Well, and that's a perfect segue into NuYou Cooking. Why don't you describe what that's all about? And then I wanted to get into just more of the nuts and bolts of how do you get something like NuYou Cooking off the ground, and then how do you sustain it? But why don't you give me a little bit of an overall description of what it is?
Yeah. So, NuYou Cooking and Consulting is a plant-based lifestyle company. And when I say plant-based, yes, includes clean, sustainable sources of animal protein.
Mm,
Um, at first, the brand, was a vegan brand, but I never promoted it as vegan because that word is so scary to a lot of people. And
mhm,
so, plant-based encompasses all people. We all, well, not necessarily, I don't want to say all people because there are people who follow a carnivore diet.
mm,
Um, but we are able to work with the broad spectrum of people. And NuYou Cooking and Consulting is founded on the idea of helping empower people and educate people
mhm,
of what are some things that you can do in your everyday life to catapult you to live the life that you love. If
mm,
we are not feeling well physically, then mentally, we are not going to be making good decisions either, most likely.
mm,
So we really talk a lot about the gut mind connection and give people tools and resources that they can do on their own. And the thing is like, that saying, you can feed a man for a lifetime by showing him how to fish, right? There's like some saying that's like in that same line, right?
right.
But if you cook him like a fish dinner, you're only feeding him one time.
Mm,
So the idea with NuYou Cooking is we want to give you food for thought. We want to feed you knowledge so then you can go live your life knowing how to go grocery shopping, knowing how
mm,
to meal plan and meal prep, and knowing how to navigate health conditions with knowledge.
mm,
So we really meet people where they're at. And that ties back into what we were talking about before is showing up and showing up with compassion, with an open mind, and with the knowing that not everyone is going to be in the same spot. People, we work with people who are, youth, marginalized youth. We
mhm.
work a lot in the reentry field. Some of, the folks that are, coming back into, society, they have been out of society since 12 years old, so
And
they
now
don't
the
know the
now
basics.
just for clarification, when you talk about reentry, you're talking about people who like were maybe incarcerated, for instance.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we work with a wide variety of people. So
Mhm.
it's important for us to show up authentically, right? People can see past the BS. People can see past, I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner, that's my title. But at the end of the day, I am Jill. I am your friend. I am going to show up authentically, and I am here to be a vessel of knowledge, love, and light to help inspire and empower people.
Well, and you bring up something that's very important. I remember I was on a call one time, and it was a group of nutritionists who were down in Los Angeles, I believe, and they were going on about, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but they were going on about, what to eat and talking about, well, go to your local Whole Foods and we're talking about yoga, go buy, what's the best yoga mat to to buy, and none of this was inaccurate, and obviously was helpful for certain people. But I stopped the conversation. I said, look, I'm not arguing about what you're talking about. I said, but not everyone has a Whole Foods in their neighborhood. Some
Mhm.
people don't want to go into their neighborhood. They don't even want to leave the house. And they don't have the money to go buy, a $200 yoga mat and all this other stuff. I said, so you're you're not being inclusive,
Mhm.
and you're not taking into account that you need to talk to people who have different lived experiences. So I'm glad you mentioned about reentry people, because you have people who have maybe spent time incarcerated. I personally have worked with a lot of survivors of sex trafficking, for instance, who are re-entering mainstream society after being trafficked for 10 years,
Mhm.
and eating and finding a job and how do you write a resume and all of this stuff is virtually new to them. So tell me more about any other things you're involved with in terms of the community at large that you work with.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I do, my heart center is community, and being involved in that capacity. This past summer, we partnered with Generation 2.0 out in Pierce County, and Generation 2.0 puts on the Bite of Black Business,
Mm,
which is a 3-month summertime event, June, July, and August.
mhm.
And that is showcasing Black owned businesses and community partners, that are, all uh, races, I guess, are
Yeah, backgrounds.
included for community vendors. So that's how I came into the picture. And because I had been putting on these community cooking classes for a few years now, um, I did a youth community cook-off challenge with the Bite of Black Business. And I've also done work with young businessmen of Washington, um, with the Institute of Black Justice, doing workshops with that cohort. Um, so I'm very involved in communities, specifically in Pierce County,
Mhm.
and specifically with marginalized communities. And the reason why is because I feel that it's my responsibility to pay it forward and give back to community. I feel like my upbringing, growing up on a farm, having the freshest food available to me, coming from a solid, loving family. And let's face it, like being a white person, with our duty and responsibility to stand up for our brothers and sisters and use our voices and our platforms to make change and make a positive impact. And so, because of all of those things, it is really near and dear to me to continue to fight for marginalized communities, to get food deserts, like get more fresh food available to people. There's a lot of food deserts, even in our own communities in Pierce County. Um, that this is a big problem,
Mhm.
and I
And
do have.
when you say food desert, why don't you give me the definition of that?
So a food desert is a area, a neighborhood that lacks fresh food,
Mm.
that only has convenience stores, gas stations, um, and people that don't have access to a car, who aren't mobile. They don't have the same uh, things available to them, say as in an affluent neighborhood that has a Whole Foods,
Exactly. That or
right?
that even has a Safeway for that matter.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Well, let me tell you. Well, let me ask you instead about maintaining a business? Because a lot of people say, I want to, oh, I just saw this interview with that Jill, and I want to do the same thing. But sometimes people plunge ahead and they have a good idea, but they don't know certain other things. So what's the key? I mean, you're in charge. I mean, you have these people you work with. I mean, if I wanted to follow your path, what would you want me to know to start a similar type of business?
Well, make sure you have a business plan. Make sure that you have an exit strategy. Um, get a mentor. Um, being and also utilizing all of the free resources that we have as a business owner. So the SBA, Small Business Administration, tons of resources. Your local chamber of commerce, tons of resources. Make sure you do market research of who locally is already doing what you want to do and figuring out what is your niche. So when I started business in 2019, there was not really anyone doing what I'm doing. And over the years, I have seen more meal prep companies pop up. Like it sometimes feels like every week I see a new meal prep company opening. And I see, people like cooking out of their homes and being like a meal prep company. And it can be very frustrating, honestly, having people cook out of their home and selling it as a meal prep business. Because me, as a small business owner, having all the permitting and licensing and a commercial kitchen and all of these things and doing it the right way, I feel like sometimes I'm getting undermined
Mm,
by these other these other people who are cooking out of their home and doing this. So being able to have thick skin, not taking things personal,
mm,
and knowing that business has no emotion at the end of the day. Um, and knowing how to pivot,
mm.
because
Okay.
NuYou is all about pivoting.
Pivoting.
And we are about to make another pivot in 2025. And I'm
Really?
not going to disclose too much because I want it to be a big surprise.
All right. Well, I will wait patiently for the news release
Yes.
or whatever. So do you have any like other aspirations? I know you've got, YouTube channels, you do interviews, you do a fair amount of networking as well. Do you like want to like, I don't know, write a book at some point or do a film or a documentary on eating clean or something like that?
Yeah. So yes, definitely a book is in the near future for sure. My business partner, Threat Brown, he actually just wrote his first book and and um and going to help me, with that. I also have another mentor who does writing as well. So definitely books are in the near future.
Mhm.
Um, what I see myself doing is I see myself traveling the world, doing keynote speaking, podcasting, and really working with companies and organizations within the corporate world, of how to increase productivity through wellness and nutrition. Because, like I said before, if you don't feel good physically, you're not
Right.
going to make good decisions in your everyday life.
Well, and another thing I would mention, because I do a lot of networking, I go to a lot of seminars, I go to a lot of conferences, and unfortunately, because I have a sweet tooth,
Hmm.
I walk into a room, and sometimes I'll walk into a room and they do have healthy options. They have fruit, or they have, different things that are obviously healthy. But then sometimes I go to meetings and there's like pizza, which I love. There's pizza, there's donuts, there's pastries.
Hmm.
There's a lot of stuff that will send my blood sugar through the roof. And so I think that just businesses I think they probably would have more productive employees sometimes if they had vending machines, for instance, that had healthy food options.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we want to start making a difference in. One of the big goals that I had when I started my business, and it still is a goal of mine, is to have plant-based options on airlines.
Oh, okay. Going back
Because
to the
there's,
airlines, so you're doing full
right?
circle there.
Full circle. So when we travel, there's not a lot of, you know, healthy plant-based
Mm,
options for people
that's
that
true.
taste good. So I want to make a difference, in the travel industry because travel is something that I'm passionate about. Um, so definitely, doing that. But also having healthy vending machines in hospitals, in schools, corporations, all these different things. I think that, COVID was a blessing and a curse all in one. I think that the blessing came from COVID was um, people started understanding that our health is fragile and it's so important that we take care of ourselves more. So people started, having the more clear understanding of, what, our life is pretty fragile and precious, and we need to get more healthy.
Mhm. Well, I don't have any more questions. Is there anything you wanted to add? And I do want you to give out your website.
Yes. So FYI, my website is a little under construction right now, but it's still active and live, but we're just making things a little more interactive and appealing. But anyways, the website is www.NuYou Cooking.com. And I'm also all over social media. Facebook is NuYou Cooking, and Instagram is NuYou_cooking. And, definitely I invite people to reach out to me. I offer a 20-minute complimentary health consultation where we can talk a little bit more about what's going on for you and how we can be of service. Also, if you're local in the South Sound area in Washington State, we offer cooking classes, weekly meal prep, catering, and I also do virtual consulting and also virtual cooking classes and workshops as well.
You have been listening to an interview with Jill Goubeaud of NuYou Cooking, talking about the connection between good nutrition and mental and physical health. I'm your host, Kevin P. Henry.